Jason Pfeiffer, hello, welcome to the Speakers Lounge, where the two of us are going to nerd out for a little bit. How does that sound to you?
That sounds fantastic. Can't
I
think of
love it.
anything I'd want to do more.
Oh, thank you. I love it. Well, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Speakers Lounge is something I do once a month. I do it the first Monday of every month at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, where I bring in a guest with visionary insights. And so today we get to speak with Jason Pfeiffer, who is editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, amongst other brilliant things, and has been on some of the world's largest stages, and is going to talk to us about some of the frameworks that he uses and has found really successful with audiences. So Jason, though, before we get this party started,
Yeah,
I have a question for you.
please.
Okay, which is, and I like to make things up on the spot because that's my jam. Communication wise,
Uh-huh.
has there been a time in the last, like not so far distant, what's what I'm trying to say, in the near future, where you had like a communication snafu and you did something impromptu that surprised you and you're going to use it again?
Oh, like while speaking. Yes, absolutely. So the snafu was this.
Mhm.
First of all, hello, everybody. It's great to be here with you. And for context, I have been s- speaking in a professional capacity, which I'll just mark as somebody paid me to get on a stage
Mhm.
since 2017. And I've gone through a bunch of different versions of who am I on that stage and what am I speaking about? And we can get into all of that. But at this point, this year, I spoke for Clorox, Dick's Sporting Goods, Pfizer, Alibaba, a lot of brands, a lot of ones you haven't heard of that I hadn't heard of, frankly, until they hired me, and they were wonderful. And so it's been a real joy, and I absolutely love this work. So I do what I call an interactive element, which is to say that there are parts of my talk that if a client wants to be interactive, wants me to talk to the audience, that I can add that in. I don't have to. I could do it without it.
Mhm.
I customize for the client and what they want. But when it's interactive, I give the audience something to talk about for 2 minutes amongst themselves. And then I bring the audience's attention back. And then I ask people to share. And then I go back and forth with whoever shares and kind of draw out some insights, is basically the thing. And I had been doing that for years from the stage, where I would have like a mic runner or something, and I would talk to people, but I would stay on the stage. And then earlier this year, I was at an event in Scottsdale, Arizona, and the 2 minutes of talking amongst themselves was going on. And the mic runner person, who I thought was going to be the mic runner, actually checks in with me from behind the stage. And she's like, when do you need me out there? And I looked at the clock and I was like, I need you out there in like 5 seconds. And then I realized, you know what? Actually, you just stay there. Just give me the mic. And then I just jumped off stage and I ran around and I was the mic runner. And it was so much better because then I suddenly was off the stage. I was interacting with people. Everyone was kind of looking not at the stage anymore, but they were like looking among each other. And I was able to, I feel like there should never be dead air. So while I was running across, I was making jokes and I was talking to people and I was high-fiving people. And it was warmer and more exciting. And I got back on that stage afterwards. And then I thought to myself, I am never using a mic runner again. I am always the mic runner. And now, funny enough, when I tell clients that, they're thrilled. Oh my God, great. We don't have to have a mic runner. Like, oh, you'll do it yourself. Amazing. So it became an asset for the audience and for the event organizers, and it's more fun for me, and I love it.
I love that you said that because I agree wholeheartedly. It's so much fun. Very, very similar thing happened to me. I was in Denver and I was in front of an audience of clean energy folks. And the same thing, they didn't have a mic runner. So I was like, I'm going to be the mic runner. And I got off that stage. And it is so fun because you
Yeah.
get to interact, you get to make jokes. Uh, I did the high fives. I got people to like, cheer from other
Mm-hmm.
directions. It's just so much more fun. So I love that you said that. And I love that that was like this happy accident that happened.
Yeah. Here's another happy accident that's related to the interactivity that I
Yeah.
think was great. Was this isn't really an accident so much as last year I checked into the hotel, and every so often the event, it's so nice when they do this, like the event organizers will have a gift for you in the
Mhm,
hotel room. It's
mhm,
usually snacks. And then I just put them in my bag and I take them home to my kids. But in this case, it was a bottle of wine, and I can't take the bottle of wine home on the airplane, and I'm not going to drink it that night. I actually almost never drink. And so I thought, what am I going to do with this bottle of wine? And then I thought, I have an idea. Why don't I'm going to bring it on stage with me, and I'm going to offer it as a prize for the first person who raises their hand during the interactive session, because, people are always nervous to be the first person. So I sort of introduced this as this bottle of wine that was given to me that I can't take home. And so I'm giving it to you, whoever raises their hand first. And people thought that was funny. And then of course somebody raises their hand, and then like the delivery of the wine is also funny, because it's like, this person just wanted the wine. And so now I'm always looking for that moment. Like, what is a thing that I picked up? Is it a free drink ticket that the hotel gave me? Like some random thing that I happen to just get in the course of being there that I then offer as a prize. And it makes it more interactive, and it also makes it a little personal. Like, here, I'm here traveling and I'm here with you all. And again, just like a little thing that I integrated into the talk. It worked really well, and now I do it all the time.
I really love that. There's this phrase that I love, which is not too tight, not too loose. And I'm sharing that with you right now, because what I'm hearing you say is that oftentimes when I work with speakers, right, we come from this place of perfection. We come from this place of like being rehearsed. We want to show up. We want to be polished. We want to please the client. But there's so much freedom when you can loosen up a little bit
Mhm.
and start to make something your own,
Yeah.
because that puts your mark on it, your authentic, your authentic mark and voice on it. So I'm curious. I know we're going to be talking about frameworks. So let's talk a little bit about, how do you continue to do that? How do you continue to yes and yourself, not only just those happy mistakes or that gift that you find in the hotel room that you can now use as leverage with your audience to get them more comfortable with you, but what
Mhm.
are some of the other things that you give yourself permission to do as a speaker?
Oh God, that has evolved over time, and
Yeah.
I love the question. So first of all, I you have to know the material so well that you can leave the material. That's how I feel. Like, if you are really confident about your material, then you can step out of it and then find your way back into it seamlessly.
Yeah.
And so I started doing this thing. I went through this evolution where, when I first started, I practiced maniacally before I would get on stage. And then then I got traction. Now people are paying me a lot of money. And I thought, I don't need to do that anymore. Like, that's for rookies. I don't practice now. Like, practicing is for somebody who's just starting. So I didn't. And occasionally I would feel like that went fine, not amazing, right? It was just like, oh, there was like a moment where I maybe forgot the thing that was coming next, and it took me a second to find it. And or like, oh, I forgot that joke that I really liked telling because I was nervous about what was coming next. And so I started to reinstitute practicing,
Mhm.
which and like, to be clear, I've now been doing this for nearly 10 years.
Yep.
I have a very full calendar of talks for very large companies for really great sums of money. I will practice literally the night before every single talk. I committed to doing that about a year and a half ago. And so that means that I show up at the wherever. I usually have dinner with a friend if somebody's in town. And then I go back to my hotel room and I run through the entire thing in my hotel room. Even if I did it last week, I still run through it. And I have
Mhm.
found it to be a absolute game changer, because to have done that is to have discovered the little mistakes that you might have otherwise made on stage, to realize that there's actually a way to condense something that you had never thought about before. And I walk onto the stage more confident that I know the material, which then gives me the freedom and flexibility to change the material on the fly, to
Mhm.
step out of the moment and engage with or react to something that's happening in the room, because I know it so well. So that's number one. Number two is that I've developed this little theory practice or something. That this is not revolutionary, but I gave the language, talk through it. Like, whatever happens, talk through it. If anything happens that somebody in the room notices, acknowledge it. Like, a joke about it. Does something go wrong? I've had everything go wrong at this point. I've had the electricity go out. I've had the fire alarms go off. I've had random interruptions by people.
Yeah.
Like, everything. And I just realized that the answer is just talking through it. Just whatever's happening, people are seeing it. They're turning to you you are not just the speaker in the room, you are the emotional leader in the room. And
Yeah.
so what you feel and project is what other people will feel and project. So it's calm, it's fun, it's funny. No matter what happens, I've got an answer to it. I'm going to tell you how I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, what I'm seeing. We're going to make a joke, and then we're going to once I feel like everyone's settled and the environment is good again, we're going to just seamlessly transition back into the material. And I have found that the moments in which I have to react in real time are the most human moments, and they're almost the ones that people remember the most, or at least remember the good experience of, which hopefully then of course helps them remember the actual content that I delivered.
No, I love that. Well, in the theater, we were taught too that sometimes when you made the mistakes on stage, the reason why they were the most memorable was because they were the most honest.
So there's a thing, and it is called the pratfall effect.
Mhm.
And if you're not familiar with it, then let me tell you very, very briefly. This is actually something that I now sometimes get into in Q&As in the talk.
Mhm.
Okay, so in 1966, there's a psychologist who runs an interesting experiment in which they take 4 groups of people, or they take a bunch of college students and divide them up into 4 groups of people, and have those groups listen to a slightly different version of audio of somebody taking a quiz. Okay, so 4 groups of people, and they're listening to someone take a quiz. And the reason that the audio is different is the following. Group number 1, they hear a person take the quiz and do so-so on the quiz.
Mhm.
The second is do so-so on the quiz, accidentally spill coffee on themselves at the end. The third is ace the quiz. The fourth is ace the quiz, accidentally spill coffee on themselves at the end. So again, just to refresh, we've got so-so on the quiz, so-so on the quiz and spilled coffee, aced the quiz, and spilled coffee. Meredith, afterwards,
Mhm.
the students were asked to rate the likability of the person that they heard. Who do you think was rated the most likable? So-so coffee, aced coffee.
So-so coffee.
That is what everybody says. It's so interesting. Every group says that.
Really?
99% of because I asked people to raise their hands.
Yeah.
99%. And then there's like 1 or 2 people who are like maybe aced and coffee. And the answer is aced and coffee. And the reason for that, and this became known as the pratfall effect, repeated in studies for decades. The reason for that is that people who make mistakes are viewed as more likable so long as they are already viewed as competent.
Ooh.
That's the twist, right? So
Yeah.
it can't just be that you mess up. It has to
Right.
be that you mess up and it is an aberration from your competence. Because once people trust you that you are really good at the thing that you do, you seem admirable, but also not like them. Like LeBron
Yeah.
James is not
Right.
like me. He's not like me. He is
Right.
way better,
Yeah.
at basketball, way better. So when LeBron James like dribbles the ball off of his foot, I think I do that too, right? And now I feel more connected to him because he is excellent at what he does, but also occasionally he makes mistakes just like me. That is what connects us. So when you're on stage and you have proven your competence, you've got the room with you, then those mistakes make people love you and you shouldn't be afraid of them.
I really appreciate that. I love that study. I'm gonna look that up. I'm gonna steal that and use that at some point,
Mhm.
Jason, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's dive in a little bit to the frameworks, right? So let's talk about this because what I'm hearing you say, and just to recap some of what we've already talked about, and if you're joining us, hi, welcome. If you do have questions for myself or Jason, please take this opportunity, put it in the comments, put it in the chat. We're also live on YouTube as well. So if you have comments there as well, please put those in the chat. But let's go back to, so we're talking about frameworks and we're talking about structure and we're
Mhm.
talking about when you know something really well, and the way that I learned it in the theater world and in the improv world is that if you know your structure really well, that's where you can find the formlessness, which is what we're talking about
Mm.
here. And there's so much freedom in that. And that's where true connection can happen with the audience. So let's talk about the frameworks and how you go about the approach of frameworks. Like, what do you do we talk about practice. What do you talk about? What do you do with your preparation? How do you use these frameworks to keep, I guess, your message alive, not just
Yeah.
for yourself, but also for your audience as well?
So I have evolved how I use frameworks. And I would say I'm still, and any speaker should still be evolving.
Mhm.
And I know where I want to go next with it. And I'm excited to spend some time actually over the holiday break and try to figure that out. But let me tell you, just generally speaking, I think the starting point for thinking about frameworks is this. Uh, People don't want a lot of things from you. They just don't. So if you're on stage for 30, 45, 60 minutes, and you throw 20 things at people, they're not going to remember any of them. Really, what you need to do is find a way to spend that entire time telling them one thing. And that one thing can be complex and interesting and nuanced, but it has to be organized in a way in which they feel like they're engaging with one idea so that
Mhm.
it doesn't feel super overwhelming.
Mhm.
Now, when I started my earlier days, I had this, it was less of a framework and more of a story. And it was what my book ended up being oriented around, which was, I talk about change. That's
Mhm.
my thing, is change management, how individuals and organizations can thrive in times of change. And I came up with this story during COVID, which is that all change happens in 4 phases: panic, adaptation, new normal, and wouldn't go back. And that's how I organized my book, was in those 4 things: panic, adaptation. And so I was using that in my talks, but I was realizing that I wasn't actually able to teach each of those stages. I could talk about how to get over panic, but then, like, how do you teach new normal? What does that even mean? Like, it wouldn't go back as more of an idea and a framing than it was anything else. Like, it wasn't a really satisfying concept.
Mhm.
And I realized that it wasn't doing the work that I needed it to do. Instead, what my talks were originally was setting out this big idea. Adaptability is important. And then I was going to just tell you a whole bunch of different stories and ways to become adaptable. And it was fine, but it wasn't great.
Mhm.
And the reason it wasn't great was because when I was opening up and I was saying adaptability is very important, this is what I've seen, is that the most successful people are the most adaptable. I wasn't then following it up by saying, and I have a specific way for you to do it. And that specific way requires understanding this, 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 this. We're going to go through that. At the end of it, you will now fully understand how to become more adaptable. When you can structure your ideas in something that feels like a framework, feels like a unfolding a playbook that is just yours, then what you are really creating is what I think of as ownable IP. It is
Mhm.
yours. It is a specific thing that only you can teach. Anybody can teach change management. Only I can teach my specific concept.
Yeah.
And the more distinct you make your ideas, which means that you have to package them in a way that feel really distinct, the more in which people say, we need that idea rather than we just need some speaker on it. So that's the reason why it's really important to structure your information in ways that feel catchy, memorable, and part of one whole. So here's what I've done. My
Mhm.
talk is structured like this, and let me tell you what it is, and then I'll tell you the deficiency that I'm working on.
Okay.
Um, so I argue, I have this kind of lay out this argument that the most successful people are the most adaptable, and the way that they do that is they develop a unique personal relationship with change. That's the language that I use right now. A unique personal relationship with change. And to do that, you need to rethink fundamental things about the way in which you work and your relationship to your work. And then I am going to lay out, and I tell people I'm going to lay out 5 of them as a way to develop that unique personal relationship with change. Now, that's 5 if I have an hour. If I have less time, I do fewer of them because I built the talk modularly. There's an intro, there's an outro, then there's 5 modules, but they can be removed if need be if I have less time. And the modules are identity, needs, reactions, process, words. We're going to rethink all of those, and then inside of all of those, I've structured. So let's say we're talking about identity, we're talking about needs. The structure of those things is introduce a big idea. I tell a story that brings it to life, often a story of me embarrassing myself in some way, something that I learned. And then it drives to a framework itself, a sort of smaller framework within the framework of something very specific that you can do or understand that you can then apply to your work, right? So I've got a large framework. I've got this promise, unique personal relationship with change. To do that, we're going to rethink these things. Within each of these things is itself an actionable framework that you can actually use, which is the stuff that then people tell me they actually start thinking about and bringing up for the rest of the conference and so on. So the thing that I find deficient about this is that it doesn't have the kind of ownable language that I need it to have. So a
Okay.
unique personal relationship with change is fine, but it's also long. Cassandra Worthy, who's become a friend of mine, very successful speaker, she
Mhm.
has this thing called change enthusiasm. And that's what she's going to teach you, change enthusiasm. And that, like, I love it. I was just talking to Cassandra about that, about how smart that is. And I need my version of that. Like, what is the thing that's like, it's 2 words, it's a package. I'm going to teach you that package. And I don't have that yet, but I need to develop that. And so next year, that is what I will be taking to stage. But let me stop there and see what you think. So again, I've got this big overarching thing. I'm going to teach you one thing, but to teach you that one thing, we're going to dig into 5 specific areas. And in each of those areas, I'm going to give you something very tactical for you to do.
No, I love it. And I would imagine too, Jason, there's actually more you could probably teach them as well. But you've taken the framework and you've built this out so that the audience is getting what they need in this time and space. Because what I'm hearing too is that often with my clients is they want to give them the whole enchilada. Like they
Yeah.
want to get out all of the information. And I always say you need to leave your audience wanting more. And so what I love is that you've built out these frameworks. You've got this very specific one idea that you're just going to nerd out over in front of the audience, and you're going to give them a very tangible takeaway. And that takeaway in itself could also be a framework.
Mm-hmm.
It's your own personal idea, IP that you've developed. And you started to talk about the modularization of it,
Yeah.
which is being able to take out things as well. So if you have those 5, we can call them key takeaways, or we can call them components to your framework,
Mm-hmm.
but that you can take those out depending on the size of your audience. You don't need to give them all 5 of them.
You don't. You
You don't
don't.
need, right?
You don't. I worried in the earlier stages of this that if I didn't give them everything, that it
Yep.
would feel like an unsatisfying talk.
Yep.
But what I came to realize is that number one, people never know what wasn't there.
Yep.
And then number two is that like you have to keep remembering that people can only retain, and therefore they only really want like one good thing.
Yep.
If people listen to you speak for any amount of time and 4 days from then they remember one thing you said, success, you've done it. It's amazing, right? And I think about that for the first time I ever came across that revelation was long before speaking. Actually, it was that when my wife, who Meredith, my
Mhm.
wife and I were getting married, and her mom started to do the thing that happens sometimes, which is just sort of taking over the planning.
Yeah.
And I didn't love that. And we were trying to figure out, like, what do we push back on? What do we protect? And I started to think about, what do I remember from the weddings of my closest friends?
Mhm.
And I realized I remember like one thing. Like one thing happened that I remember, and the rest of it is a complete blur. So I said to Jen, my wife, I said, let's just pick the 1 or 2 things that we want people to remember, and let's make sure that those are ours. And then the rest of it, who cares? And, now when people who were at our wedding bring up our wedding, not like that happens often, but when it does, the thing that they talk about is always the 1 or 2 things that we actually cared about. So you can port that over into everything that you are doing. If I stand on stage for 30 minutes, I can't give people the same content that I would do in 60 minutes. It doesn't matter, because all they needed was really one thing. They needed a great experience, which I can provide because I feel very confident as a speaker. And then also they need that thing that they're just going to be thinking about, that they're going to tell somebody else about, that they're going to go back to the office next week and they're going to introduce to their teams. Like, they just need that one thing. You have to know what that one thing is. And so the way that I started to focus on the one thing was that no matter what talk I gave, no matter what version of it, 30, 45, 60, 90 minutes, sometimes people have me go on for a long time. I get out into the audience afterwards and I chit chat with people, and I'm listening. I'm listening for, what did they tell me they loved,
Mhm.
which they will often just volunteer, right? I really loved that thing that you said about, like I thought about it and here's my answer. They'll do that. But most importantly, what are they not talking about? What's the part of the
Mm.
talk that nobody is saying, that was my favorite part? Because if you notice that pattern, you have found something to drop from your talk. And now you have to replace it with something else, something that's better, something that should compete for the one thing that they're going to remember. And that is how I have been evolving my material over time. That's how I got to the 5-part structure that I have, which I can pull out and do 4 or 3 or whatever. But those were the winners. Those are the ones that people
Love
just
it.
kept saying. And so now, it's a really high bar for some new material to come in and unseat one of those things, because I've spent years dropping other material. And so how do you know if something new should go in? The answer, by the way, is that's what the Q&A session is for.
Mhm.
Start to float new material in the Q&A session when people ask questions, and you see, is that the thing that people say they liked after the talk? Because if so, then maybe that should be developed into a whole module of its own.
Oh, I love that very much. It's like the stand-up comedian practicing their set for the first time. It's like,
Mm,
let's see what's working and what's not working here by being really specific and intentional with that Q&A section. I think
yeah.
that's really great. Um, the other thing I want to point out too, there's 2 things. One is for those who are watching and listening right now, frameworks are also really helpful for you to keep track and the order in which you are delivering your talk. So when
Mm,
you understand that framework and that structure really well, again, and you practice that, like we had talked about at the beginning of this talk, that is where you can start to have fun. You can start to find the formlessness. When you don't give yourself structure or frameworks, it's really difficult to follow along. The
I-
second piece is, Jason, you're really good at communicating with your audience members, going out there after your talks, getting that feedback. I would imagine there's people that are watching and listening right now that are like, when I get off stage, I feel terrified to go out onto the audience, or I just want to go hide. Give us a couple of things that you do to help nurture that communication with your audience right after your talk.
Okay, so first, let me just add one thing to the thing that you just said before, which was about how helpful the framework is for the audience. So there's a word that I picked up in podcasting, though I'm sure it exists in many other places. I used to make narrative podcasts, and that is the word signposting, to
Mhm, mhm.
constantly be helping people know where they are in any work,
Yeah,
because people will get lost. It
yeah.
might make sense to you, but they might not have any idea, like what's happening next. What is he talking about again? And so I always want to do this thing, which is, basically, here's what we're going to talk about. Here, now we're talking about it. Here's what we just talked about. Here's what we're talking about next. And just to
Mhm,
constantly do that. So
mhm.
I lay it out at the very beginning. I have a slide. These are the 5 things we're going to talk about, or I update it for 3, whatever it's going to. And then I have a big side. We're going to get into identity. Identity. This is the first thing we're going to talk about. Da, 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 da. Next, we're going to talk about needs. And I'm always signposting for people so they know where they are in my talk and
Yeah.
what we're talking about now. And then I always kind of go back at the end of a section and sort of re-emphasize the main point there. You never, ever want people to feel lost. You always want them to feel like they are progressing with you. And that's a beautiful thing about about frameworks, is that if you can take information, and at this point I've trained myself to do this on almost anything that I talk about. If someone interviews me for a podcast, I will come up with frameworks on the fly. I'm always introducing things by saying, there are 3 things here that you need to know. And sometimes if you can give it a name, a framework with a name is beautiful, right? So this is the list before you leap framework, and you have to ask these 3 questions. This is the work your next job, and the work your next job is, there are 2. I have like a million of them that so it's like you come up with information, you break it up into 1, 2, or 3 things, and give those and then give it an overarching name, and now you've got something that you can walk people through, and they'll never ever feel lost. Now, to your question about how do I kind of have the confidence or kind of steel
Mhm.
myself to go out into the audience. Well, look, number 1 is I know how I'm doing during the talk. And the reason I know how I'm doing during the talk is really like 2 to 3 things. Number 1, jokes. I have jokes throughout my talk. And the
Yeah.
reason I have jokes throughout my talk is, I guess, sort of, I like to be funny, but also is because to me, it's call and response. Like, it
Mhm.
is a test to see if the audience is with you. And that test, you have to understand the nuances of the results of that test, because you can get in front of audiences that are more conservative
Mhm.
culturally, and they won't laugh as much, but they still really liked the talk. And so just because they're not laughing doesn't mean that they don't like you, but you do get a lot of good feedback by prompting.
Mhm.
Number two, I'm just looking at people. I'm looking at people deeply, and I'm filtering in my head. There's like always a kind of couple categories of people that I'm talking to.
Mhm.
So there's always the person who's really into it, and I love that person, and I want to hug that person, nodding along, and they're taking notes, and I love that. But you know who I love also?
Uh-huh.
I love that older guy who has been to 43 of these, and
Sitting like this.
yep, yep, sitting back, and he's got his arms folded, and occasionally he's checking his phone,
Yep.
and I wanna keep checking in with him to see if I've brought him in. Is he leaning forward more now? Is his
Yep.
phone finally down? And, like, I love just every couple minutes, I'm looking back at that guy. Is he doing anything different? And if he's not, I'm not worried about it, but he usually is.
Mhm.
And so I that to me is a great temperature check. Three, this is a great reason to be hopping off the stage and getting out into the audience because people like it and because it connects them with you. And then finally, here's the thing, at the very end of a talk, before I get off stage, I always tell people I'm sticking around. Like, just like
Ooh,
before
I like that.
before we
Mhm.
wrap up,
Mhm.
I just, like, I want you to know I'm going to be done in just a couple minutes. I would love to hear from you. I'm going to be out. I'll be out there. Like, come find me. I would love to talk. So I invite people to do it. And then I come out, and sometimes I get flooded. And sometimes people come up and they say, "Hey, I really like that." And they walk away. That's fine. But I think it's critical to be talking to those people. Critical. They will give you the feedback that will help your talk, full stop. You need to hear what they're saying and what they're not saying.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Jason, I could talk to you all day long
Yeah.
about
Oh, yeah.
presenting, and that's
Likewise.
how we first met, was at a party, and we started talking about public speaking, and we nerded out for a while, and so I really appreciate you, coming on to the speakers lounge, having this conversation with me. We're gonna do what I tell people to do all the time, which is we're gonna leave our audience wanting more.
Here it is.
Here it is. So what I'm going to do here is if you want to follow Jason, please connect with Jason. He has one of the best newsletters I have ever read. I
Oh,
love
thank
it.
you.
I share it all the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a very good one. It's very informative. I love it. Love it. So please connect with Jason if you haven't already. Follow him. I love your brain. I appreciate your brain. So thank
Appreciate
you for
you.
being here. We're going to leave our audience wanting more. I'm going to end
Wait,
with our
wait,
fun.
before you end, can I just say that
Yeah.
I did not know you were going to throw out that QR code, and I really appreciate that you did. But I got over the fear of putting my own QR code up at the end of my talks. I was like, this is going to be obnoxious. People are going to feel like I'm selling them. But no, I've been
Mhm.
doing it, and it's great. I get to the very end. I tell people, if you want to get in touch with me, just sign up for this newsletter. It contains a lot of things that are just like the stuff that we talked about today. And I always tell them, if you respond to the newsletter, it goes to my inbox. I will respond back to you. And I just watch everybody. They just take their phones out and they scan that thing, and it's right on there. And I've gotten so many newsletter subscribers from that. So do not be afraid to drive some kind of next step at the end of your talk. You should be gathering that audience as you go. You've earned that audience, and you should grab them. But today, Meredith, you did it for me, and I really appreciate that.
You're so welcome. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. And sometimes you have to take that extra step and invite them to pull out their phones and actually scan it.
Mhm.
People need the direction. Don't be afraid to give them the direction. You're hosting your own party.
Yeah,
So, Jason, thank you so much. I'm going to play my fun little intro for my outro here.
it's a good one.
And have an amazing rest of your day.
Thanks,
Enjoy
you
that
too.
lunch of yours.
And
Okay,
thanks,
here we
everybody.
go. Thanks, everyone.